Andy McGrath is an English cryptozoologist and author of the book Beasts of Britain. In his book, McGrath documents the many folk tales and unusual sightings taking place in his home country. One such tale is that of the werewolf of Camberwell. Witnesses describe the creature as a canine humanoid with an aggressive disposition.
This is a story I came across when I was researching for Beasts of Britain, and I think it had appeared on a few websites. It appeared in, I'm sure it appeared in one of Linda Godfrey's books a long time ago, and also it was just doing the rounds. I couldn't trace a witness. I didn't know who the witness was, and no matter who I spoke to, I couldn't trace it. But it just seemed amazing to me. Old Camberwell Cemetery is in London, in Forest Hill. It's a really, really old place. I mean, it's been there since, I think it was in the 1800s, 1855. There was a church, a parish of St. Giles was established, and they built this new cemetery on 30 acres of meadowland and forest. So it's all woodland, and now in this time, the trees and the woods are growing through the gravestones, and it's become a kind of forest at the same time, or the wilder parts have. So it's interesting, this. This is old London. Okay, so what happens? It's October 9th, 1996. A man's en route to see a friend decides to take a shortcut to Camberwell Old Cemetery. Saving time. I think he's probably heading to the other estate on the other side. So he's cutting through this old cemetery. Completely black. Something really strong grabs him, smashes him into the ground by its arm. Then he sees a large creature, dark fur and a head like a German shepherd, looking at him, slobbering, growling, sniffing his body up and down like a dog. And really quickly, just as it starts, it's over, and the beast sprints off on its hind legs, not on all fours. And he says something really weird, or at least it's reported that he says he believed he was spared because he suffers from a disease that dogs can smell, which was always the weird clincher for me. When I'm looking at sightings, I'm looking for weird, mundane facts that don't belong in the sighting, and yet somehow seem to be representative of, PTSD-style retelling of the tale. So if you're walking through an old lane and suddenly you notice one of the lights is out on a street light is out, and then you're attacked by a Bigfoot or whatever this weird creature is, you can never forget that streetlight part of the sighting. It's not really that important, but you retell it. You bring it up every time because it forms a story. So I thought that was interesting. A few years later, and I get this sighting personally myself. This is told to me by an Irish lady who was living in London, saw me print this werewolf of Camberwell sighting and talk about it online. She said, myself and a friend, we lived in this area, and in 2004, on a summer's night, around 11:30 p.m., they're walking up Underhill Road, which is on the cemetery side of the road. And as they're walking up the road, they suddenly hear a really loud, weird noise and look at the cemetery, and they see a really large tree in the corner of the cemetery shaking incredibly hard, as if something really huge and powerful is shaking it with all its might. And get really, really scared. They run. Basically they hear another noise like a really low growl, and they head off, in different directions to their home. And that's it. Now she says, and this could be a fear and a trauma thing as well, but she says we were terrified. We couldn't rationalize what had happened for the sheer terror. Instinctively, we knew we had to get as far away from the flimsy fence of the cemetery as fast as we possibly could. Something very sinister there. I don't think I ever walked past the road again or ventured inside the cemetery. Now, I've been to the location. It is an old cemetery. It's got new parts, and some people are still buried there, by the way. There's a Camberwell New Cemetery not far away also. There's some housing estates around there now, and then some old style London houses that survived the bombings in the war, and some other newer 50s style houses. But it's an old area. This is old London. And as you walk around and you go into the forested parts of the graveyard, you just see all of this, especially with the cut through. You see all these trees growing out of the graves, and there's just a like a graveyard, eerie sense about the place. But there's something else that's also quite uncomfortable about being there. And I didn't know if it was the fact that the area is quite rough. It's quite a dodgy area these days. It's a good place to get stabbed, actually. So I was kind of aware when I was there. Or if it was something else, is there something else here? I definitely can't account for the tree shaking. We don't have any kind of creature. We don't have any bears or any big animals at all that could shake a tree. And there wouldn't be a deer, even if one could do such a thing. There wouldn't be a large deer in the middle of Camberwell Cemetery. Now, the whole area, actually, there's lots of little pockets of big parks and woodlands surrounding that part of the city. And London is like that. There's lots of wooded ways in and out of the city, especially in that area. So I wondered, could something have got in? Could it have been a person both times, like a disturbed person, masked up, costumed up, scaring people? Difficult to know, but still, unnerving. I think the problem with all Dogman reports for me, or werewolf reports, let's call them werewolf reports, is that for me, I'm credulous because I can't fit it into the natural world. I can't fit it anywhere into the natural world. However, if the shoe was on the other foot and somebody gave me a Bigfoot sighting, even in this area, seeing the sort of the green corridors and the forested routes in and out at night that might be available, I may have just accepted it as a valid story. That's what troubles me, I think, about this thing. I'm reluctant to believe in the paranormal explanation for these things. I'll give you another werewolf story from the UK. Actually, there's quite a few, because this one again presents itself. It's recent. This is from 2016. It made a lot of headlines. Actually, there was even talk of Alice Cooper, the rock star, openly asking for information on the sighting. He had it didn't seem surprising that he would be interested in such a thing, although it did seem quite typical, if you ask me. And this one's called the Werewolf of Hull, or Old Stinker is the traditional name for this beast, and it's in a place called Hull, in the north of the country. It's also known as the Beast of Barmston Drain. And there were several sightings around about the same time, 2016. So the first person who saw it was a woman. She described it. She said it was stood upright one moment, the next it was down on all fours, running like a dog. I was terrified. It vaulted 30 feet over to the other side of the drain. A drain, in this description, by the way, is like a drainage channel that runs through the countryside. Like a very deep channel, normally banked on both sides by high grassy verges. And so it vaulted 30 feet to the other side of the drain and vanished up the embankment and over a wall into some allotments. She described it running both on two legs and all fours, as we already know, had the qualities of both a human and a wolf. Another couple said they saw something tall and hairy eating a dog next to a drainage channel. Again, I'm assuming it's the same one, which runs through the countryside. They added that it jumped over an 8-foot high fence with the animal in its mouth. That's very unusual. Yet another woman walking her dog one evening spotted something she described as being half dog and half human. And there's something funny about that sighting. She says that her dog adamantly refused to go any further along the path they were walking along. And it always makes me laugh. But why did she want to carry on? If that's really what you saw. And then there's another one after this, actually, which I'm not quite sure is a werewolf sighting, because I've since talked to people who talked to the lady who described this thing having a human face. But in the same area, there was an animal rescue worker, and she and some friends, they were driving through the East Riding village of Halsham, and she said she saw a beast that looked like a big dog with a human face. She was with two friends at the time, and said, we're driving to this country lane on our way to get some pizza. My friend in the back seat said that he'd seen a fox I looked at my driver's side and saw this beast on all fours, who started to walk straight towards my car on two legs. It looked like a big dog, probably bigger than my car, but it had a human face. It also had this cream and grey fur. My automatic reaction was to keep on driving, of course. Then they stopped at the nearby petrol station to calm themselves down, or gas station. And when the concerned staff asked what had happened, what was wrong with them, they described their sighting. And everybody in the gas station just said, yeah, sure, that's old Stinker. That's the beast that lives around here. So these are strange things. It's word of mouth, anecdotal sightings, like all cryptozoology for the most part. But strange, that's correlation. That's one area in 2016 with several descriptive sightings. And it's not the only one, but I find it hard. I find it very hard to accept that there could be something like this wandering about the place. Everything about it. These are very naturalistic, especially the Werewolf of Hull reports. They're very naturalistic reports. There's nothing really, apart from what they're describing, seeing. There's nothing flamboyant or there doesn't seem to be any embellished factor about the sightings. Okay, so let's say the first sighting of the animal running on all fours and then on two legs that vaulted 30 feet over to the other side of a drainage channel. Well, there would be an easy way to check that. We could go up there and see what the distance was of the drainage channel. And if we're foolish enough, try jumping it and seeing how far we could get, as humans. Could that be a human in a mask pranking people? The couple that saw the tall and hairy creature eating a dog next to a drainage channel. Well, I'm being sure. Could it have been a small dog? Could it have been somebody again that killed a small dog? Fine, but how did it jump over an 8-foot high fence? That's outside the realms of human capability, and definitely outside of the realms, the description of any animal we have wild in this country. I think that really makes it significant. Again, with the animal rescue worker, although that seems more like a Bigfoot sighting to me, seeing the creature on all fours that stands up, two legs, and is bigger than the car, has a human face, and has this cream and grey fur, I'd say that's unusual. Could that be a deer? Well, not of that colour. Could it be mistaken by somebody who lives in the countryside? Now, the way she was driving down those country lanes, if you ever drive in the UK in the countryside, the lanes, as they call them, the roads, they're hedged on either side normally, or walled, and they're very, very narrow, and they normally curve like this. So you can't really see what's coming around the corner the whole time. It's but you do see lots of wildlife, and similarly to yourselves in the US, you'd be used to seeing something. You're unlikely to mistake a deer for an unusual creature, or even a porcupine, or whatever you have around there sometimes. A bear, perhaps, could be mistaken for something. But in this country, that would be just as extraordinary in some respect. The way the general knowledge of the UK population is formed. Most people in the UK would be completely unaware that we ever had wolves here, or bear. And when I speak to people, they certainly are unaware that we had those two large predators in our land. They certainly wouldn't feel bad about it. I'm not sure if that holds weight in the US, but I don't think the collective guilt about anything. And remember, we they conquered and ruled 54 countries around the world. There's not much collective guilt about that, going forward. And definitely, no, not about the wolf population. I think there is a very strong paranormal interest amongst a large population of the UK for things like psychic nights and ghost hunting and other things like the mystery walks in the woods. There's a Bigfoot sighting in a wood near me, but the same wood has also had several ghost groups going in at night, seeking experiences. And I think there could be a much greater chance of people's an overwhelming interest or background interest in things like folklore and even werewolf folklore that could cause these kinds of sightings, perhaps. But it's still, from a psychological perspective, to be mistaken in such a vision would really be a sign of, I think, some severe mental illness. And it could certainly be, but to such frequency, I'm not really sure whether that's possible or not. I'll say this, I think in recent years that the werewolf has gone through a rebranding as the Dogman, especially in places like the US, where for all intents and purposes, what we're dealing with, again, with the Dogman phenomenon is, and we're talking about the pizza effect, that coming back over to this country again, reigniting werewolf sightings through Dogman interest. What we're dealing with is the werewolf folklore, coming into our modern age. It's coming into our modern age again. It was in our history, all of the folklore of our nations that we the one we live in now and the ones that you would originally have come from, your ancestors, and yet it's resurging again. On one hand, it could be because of social media and the sheer amount of Dogman and werewolf pages out there. On the other hand, there could be something that's cyclical, that represents either a psychological phenomena that takes place, representative of something that takes place in human history, or an actual creature that we've yet to classify. Seems unlikely, but possible.